You
Okay.
guys are funny.
You might need digital diapers by the time you're done.
Oh, I've been wearing those for days.
Diapers. I've heard everything now.
Let's pivot and do a kind of quick recap of last week. Give everyone who's new here a kind of rundown of what we usually do, and then get into today's main topic. So for all you newcomers, we usually have a format where we have one person is presenting. It's usually one of our panelists. If you're a panelist, you know who you are. And then we move into a time of panelist discussion so that there's structure and you get some commentary and thoughts and questions from people who own businesses who are all in this industry. And then we move into open Q&A. That's the usual format. So feel free to throw a question in the chat if you want. That's very helpful. You might even write in all caps question just so it's easier for us to find. And then if we have time at the end during the open Q&A, even do the raise hand so I can kind of see who wants to talk. And if we get through the chat, we can do that live, turn on your mic, that kind of thing. But please do try to keep it under 30 seconds. It can be hard, but I want to make sure that everybody has time. So that is kind of the rundown. Today is going to be a little bit unique like last week was, because we're going to skip any kind of presentation. We're going to go right into panelist discussion because it's more like what's been happening in the past 18 months kind of thing. So that's the rundown. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Isaac. Monty here as well. We both own Abound Social. And then we have a lot of panelists here today. I see Mike and Crystal, Viveka, Mary, I see Dimitri. Am I not seeing anyone who's here? Is that everybody here who's for panelists? Awesome. All right. So last week, what we did is we took a minute and paused to just sort of reflect on the new features that became available on LinkedIn this past year, 18 months. I feel like everybody's been so insanely busy that everyone's been so insanely busy. Plus, there's been so many new features that it's like, oh, that's fun. That's cool. That's awesome. That's a shiny new thing that I could do. And it kind of comes and it goes. You never take a moment to say, all right, well, this actually could be a really valuable thing that I could incorporate into my sales strategy. Oh, this new thing could be very valuable for this component in our marketing strategy. So that's what we talked about last week. Lots of good things. I think that in the last 18 months, there's been more updates to LinkedIn than the previous 5 years combined. So there's a lot to talk about. We didn't even really scratch the surface, honestly. It was more topical. And then hearing how people who own sales marketing companies have been implementing these features for themselves and for their clients. So that was last week. What we want to do this week is a part 2, and that is how has the overall landscape of sales and marketing changed in the last 18 months? Because I feel like there were a lot of trends that were just trends. And then, COVID came and everyone had to work remote, and a lot of those trends were solidified. And I think there are some new trends that are kind of just starting to percolate. And there are some, just the landscape has changed, like just the mere broad acceptance of a virtual event changes so many things. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to share my screen. I grabbed the topics that were in the email just as a sort of, just to get us started here. I'll look at that, Greg. We're no longer live. I'm just kidding. Thank you. All right, so let's do this. We're going to jump right into panelist discussion here. So let me just do this. Just to get some ideas going.
Can you zoom your screen once?
I think I sure can. Let's do this. I'll delete this guy and see if I can go. I cannot zoom it because it'll just do the.
Just do Command plus. There you go.
Yeah, it doesn't do the actual text.
It will do your screen though. There you go.
Bump the
There,
font. All right.
Is that better? Is that cool?
Yep.
Okay. So let me just throw one in here. I'm kind of curious, how has going virtual changed sales etiquette? So at Abound, like I'm really hands-on in sales, SDR, and with employees in the last 18 months working remote and virtual, I've observed some big changes in how that affects our day-to-day. Off the top of my head, I would say 3-4 years ago, if we are doing sales and we are engaging with like a mid-level manager and it was Thursday evening or Saturday or Sunday, I would not, I would say, don't even talk to them, because they're not going to check their email. They're not going to check work until they get to the office. And now they're working, a lot of them from home or hybrid. It's so much more common to check their email, to check their LinkedIn, to check work stuff before work, before they eat breakfast, after, like before they go to bed, Saturday, Sunday. They might not respond, but they're more available. And I feel like that one thing has forced us to go, well, shoot, maybe it is actually appropriate to have a wholesome work conversation in a kind of casual way after hours, or on Saturday or Sunday. That's been one change that we've made as far as like sales etiquette. So I would say 3 years ago, good etiquette. Don't talk to someone about work Thursday at 7 p.m. They don't care. They want to watch Netflix. And now I'd say, well, you can be polite about it. Shoot them a message on Thursday evening. Just, they might not respond, but they might be available. I think that's one big thing that I've seen change personally. I'd love to hear any thoughts, comment on that, and then we can move on as well.
I think it depends on your relationship with the person. I don't want to talk to somebody I don't really know very well on Saturday or so, but I have people in my circle that I would. You could call me on Saturday, Isaac, but Jack Short Johnson Jackamajou can't.
Mm-hmm.
Who I just might have met. So
that's a good point. So maybe you during 9 to 5, that's when you maybe initiate that first handshake, and then once you have a network of people, ideally in the sales context, they could be buyers. But if the relationship is there, it's more appropriate to talk about work after hours, Saturday, Sunday.
First, second, or third. I mean, I'm not sure I'd jump even quickly to the second action to contacting someone on a Saturday, unless there was something that was timely. If there was some expression of timeliness, but you're in the right to call someone on Saturday over time, not the 2 days after you connect or talk or chat or text or something.
Even if you've had a couple in-mails or emails, Mike, I'm with you. I think there's still some boundaries on, you can send an email after hours on a Thursday at 5. Totally. Even on a Friday, you can send an email and they might get back to you or they might not, but I don't think calling people on the weekend, following up on, hey, did you get my email? Hey, do you want to discuss that proposal? I know you had some questions. Like Mike, you could call me. Viveka, you could call me. Isaac, maybe. Monte for sure. No, but no, I'm with you. Like I think that there's still some boundaries, even though things have shifted where it's 24/7. The global community, we're all working from home. I think we still need to be mindful of boundaries and parameters, unless you've spoken to this potential client, right? And they said, my week slammed. I'd love to have a thoughtful conversation on Saturday.
It comes down to synchronous versus asynchronous. The asynchronous stuff is get to it when you can, and that's email and postings and social stuff. And synchronous stuff is a conversation, or I consider a text message to be synchronous, because you're really looking for an answer kind of now. It wouldn't be nice.
I think you have to differentiate.
Fine.
I think you have to differentiate the type of communication that you're talking about and what's appropriate for. First off, let me say I'm going to be using Johnson Jackamajou at least daily from now on. So, but people have gotten used to, like, if we just leave it on LinkedIn, getting connections, getting connection requests over the weekends, getting DMs over the weekends and stuff like that. That doesn't mean then they're necessarily going to engage on the weekends. But we've also seen a lot of people that are willing to have a basic, short, which is what DMs are for, right? Those are short communications. You're not going to have long, lengthy conversations Otherwise, you're going to try and pull that off platform. People aren't going to go off platform usually over the weekend, but I do think people have gotten used to and are even somewhat more attentive on the weekends just because they're not so distracted by work. They can actually sit down and invest into what they're doing on LinkedIn for a few minutes. So I totally agree with what you guys are saying. There's definitely still those traditional boundaries of I'm not going to pick up the phone and call you guys just for on the weekend to try and have a sales conversation, but I may reach out, see how you're doing on DM, and then you get to choose whether you respond to it over the weekend or follow it up the next week.
Isaac, I'm not on the panel, but can I jump in?
Only because you gave us an amazing nugget earlier, Roger.
Roger, Roger that.
Wait, hang on. Oh, dang it. Hang on.
Greg,
Sorry.
but that's all right. So I think, I mean, just to devil's advocate, I think COVID, whatever, virtual sales changed nothing when it comes to time. I think people's respect for time has stayed the same. That is not going to change. I think what has changed is how people are showing up to their conversations. And I think, you know, pre-COVID, if you can remember that far back, like having a phone call, remember those was the normal, like a conference call where people actually aren't showing their faces. I think now that people are showing their faces, almost expect a video conference call. By the way, that was a huge transition. I think it's how you're showing up on the face-to-face calls. Are you eating your lunch? Are you,
Background.
Are you speaking with, oh, this is my new thing. Are you speaking with glottal fry? Just a quick show of hands. You know what glottal fry is? So you ever hear someone speaking and it's like, it's almost annoying to hear that the voice is not even clear. It's like how you're showing up. Can you be seen? Can you be heard? I think that's really important when it comes to respecting the people you're with, how you're showing up. I think that's changed for sales etiquette.
Definitely.
True.
And remembering people whose first name's the right first name, right, Greg?
World Wide Web and Roger.
Well, I can say with confidence that, 3-5 years ago, when we would engage people on LinkedIn on the weekends and after hours, we didn't get a whole lot of response, and now we do. So again, definitely there's etiquette's always going to be there, expectations and boundaries, but I think the availability has changed because I think more people are kind of just plugged in constantly. And I think that might mean something when you're trying to figure out how you're going to take action with sales.
Hey,
I think
Isaac,
the other thing that should be differentiated there is, nobody likes being pitched no matter where it is or when it is, when it's cold, so these conversations that we're talking about, if you're doing sales conversations, so to speak, in DM, nobody's going to like it and respond much to you anyway. So unless you're solving somebody's problem, unless you're engaging in a way that is showing that you're concerned about them first, that's going to open that opportunity. That also hasn't changed in the industry. In fact, I would say it's probably even gotten worse for people because there's been so much spam, specifically on LinkedIn and then through email, because that's pretty much become the norm. Cold email outreach, cold DMs, in-mails, so on and so forth, that are so heavily sales driven, not relational.
hey guys, so far we're talking about pre-sales stuff, the selling process. I'm finding that I'm doing a lot more work, quite frankly, on the weekends, doing client work that involves real-time client communication. Like LinkedIn just sent a 6-digit code. Can you send it to me? Or I changed some messaging. Can you approve it so I can add it to the campaign or so? I'm doing more real-time communication with clients, doing real work on weekends than I used to. And I think that's got a lot to do with with two-factor authentications and things like that, because we've got that turned on a lot of cases and stuff. But what about anyone else? That's different than a pre-sales environment? That's delivery.
I feel like here, because of, I mean, I have 4 young kids and stuff, and I try really hard to have rest on the weekends and after hours so I don't burn out and to prioritize my family. But that's more, I think, of a personal decision.
With kids, right? That's definitely
Yeah.
right. Yeah, sure.
I have a client that when I was working with him, on Sundays, I would send him an email, and then he was like, no emails, Mary, no emails. I want to get away from that. So I would text him with like, hey, I'm gonna need these assets, these items, to create your post. And he was like, do not text me on Sundays. So it's the client, you got to know your client. And I could only text him after 10 a.m. in the morning and before 5 p.m. Like, he had this very small window of open communication. He's also like this mindset guy, and he's shifted and all this other stuff. And I respect that, but it made it very difficult. It made it very difficult to communicate with him and get the information in a timely manner. But so, you just have to understand what your clients and potential clients, what their communication avenue is. Is it
Wait. So this mindset guy that shifted had a problem in getting you assets when he promised?
We're no longer
Right,
working
so-
together.
Let's bring it back to how the sales and marketing landscape has changed in the last year, instead of client management things. But
Okay.
I think that people working more from home and wonky hours does impact client management for sure. So panelists, what other trends, changes have you observed in the last year for sales and marketing?
Well, Isaac, I'm just going to jump in real quick. One of the things I see with the law firms that I work with and individual attorneys, especially if they're running a smaller practice, is I see a lot of them wanting to, and I don't know if it's because of the past 2 years, we've had more time to sort of dive into ourselves and why we're doing what we're doing, and how am I serving and all that. I think there's been sort of an introspective component to these last 2 years, and a lot of them are asking, how do I surface that? How do I show, what I consider prioritize as my social responsibility in terms of marketing messages? They want to tie it in to that social responsibility component, which I'm wary of it, because sometimes it's talk. Sometimes they're actually, I can see in their communications and the way they are, that they really are being thoughtful about that. So I see that social responsibility being prioritized among attorneys and law firms, and in some cases even, genuinely. So I don't know if you guys see that more and more in your clientele, your clients.
We do. And I feel like, honestly, Vivica, it gets to be a little bit of a hot potato.
Yeah.
So we have if you own an agency here, we put in our service agreement that when we're doing content, we're going to keep it related to business. So that way they can have the flexibility to pursue those social things on their own. But for our liability, like, what if you say one wrong word on a social cause, that can put you in hot water. I want them to be able to do what they want to do, but I want to stay in the work vein. So that's one we've observed that too. We've kind of put it into our agreement so that they can get what they want, but we can have some safety there.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a sensitive area, but the ones that have stepped it up, and I feel are doing so in a genuine way without screaming it, but actually doing it in a very sophisticated way and tying into their business and the way they do business without just using a bullhorn to yell about whatever they feel passionate about. Those folks are showing up and getting way better traction than playing sort of the status quo. Let's not show our opinions too much. Let's not, take a stand. And I'm actually encouraging my attorneys to take having a stronger point of view on areas, but tying it in to their overall marketing message. But yeah, it's a sensitive one, but I'm seeing that more and more. And people ask.
Absolutely, we are. Yeah, we are too. That's really good insight. Really good insight. All right, panelists, what other changes in the landscape have you seen? Sales and marketing. And you don't have to go off what's on here. These are just ideas that you started. How about this? What do you feel like is driving purchase decisions when companies are a little bit uncertain? You know, I know the phrase uncertain times has been tossed around so much and it just kind of annoyed me even typing it, but really there's a little bit more uncertainty. And I feel like if you're going to be closing a deal, that uncertainty and the lack of confidence that things are going to be perpetually better, it does affect purchase decisions. I feel like as a company, you almost need to say, we have some actual data that this is going to produce an ROI for you. You know, like before COVID and when we're just rolling in money, I mean, we're rolling in different kind of money now, inflation, but I feel like you can kind of get by with, oh, just trust me. And now there's a little bit more at stake. And I think that has put pressure on businesses to kind of quantify the ROI. Anybody else experience that at all?
No, I have not. I don't think ROI is convincing to anybody in my experience before or after, the pandemic. I think really powerful stories and people buy emotional reasons justified by logic. I think the buying reasons people buy now because of what they can't tolerate anymore, or it's what's intolerable. But I don't know if that's really changed much. I think that's always been the case. I'm not sure.
Explain that out a little bit more.
I think businesses make a change of how they're currently doing things because they can't tolerate another day or week or month doing the way they're currently doing it. And that's why they buy.
It hurts too much, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
I don't
feel
think
like,
that's changed so much.
Businesses have to get to the point where the pain is so extreme, they're not making decisions before that gets to that point. You're saying that it's now okay, I'm fully on fire. Now let's change.
I mean, I ran a poll on LinkedIn. I said, looking back at 2021, where did you lose most of your deals? Was it to price? Was it to a competitor? Was it to status quo or no decision, or just let's just keep going the way we're going? And by far, the majority was like 80%, like no decision or status quo, which tells me that the reason why they didn't buy is because they were okay with doing the way things that they were doing it. And but so the reason why people will buy from a sales perspective is because it's intolerable.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that once they are ready to buy and they're choosing between vendors in a B2B context, do you think that there's more pressure to justify ROI when the business is a little bit shaky?
No, I don't think so. ROI to me, whenever I see statistics from Gong.io, whenever salespeople bring up ROI and data for ROI, the data shows that doesn't convince anybody to do anything. People go to sleep when they see ROI. They wake up when they talk about how much they're suffering in their current state.
Yeah, good insight. All right, other panelists, how have you seen the sales and marketing landscape change in the last 18 months?
Are you just wanting people to jump around to your bullet points, or are you trying to go through them one?
No, the bullet points are just there to get your wheels spinning. You can chime in on one, or you can add your own.
I gotcha. Okay.
I'll jump in real
Go
quick
for it.
again, if I can.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a distinction, and I'm seeing it change as we speak too, between more ephemeral sort of trending topics, posts, messaging versus sort of more permanent based messaging. And Monty, you're a great example of sort of the posts that are that stick more versus the short, quick, sexy bits. Those are passing through, and it seems like even with the millennials, Gen Z, that are getting more and more of the buying power, so to speak. I think even the longer posts, those that tend to have a stickier aspect to them, are gaining over the more ephemeral, sexy ones that are just kind of spinning by that we're scrolling through. I don't know if you guys see that trend, and we're seeing sort of the engagement and the love coming back several days later. It's not only within that first hour or 2 hours that still are important, but I'm seeing, drip love coming in later.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of weird that if you guys see that, so the short, sexy ones versus the more permanent, stickier versions of messaging and content and outreach. Any feedback on that?
I write the way I do because I have no short, quick, sexy bits in me. I'm just
You liar.
I'm just all blabbing, but
That's all I have.
but
Okay, I could have used other words, but I did that.
from the excuse me, from the algorithm standpoint, and from what I have seen online is that the longer form content is tending to stick a little bit better, but the basic principles of it are still true, right? I mean, if you're not writing engaging content, you're not going to get engagement. So that's become the more focus. I would add to it that, I think what is emerging or has been emerging is this fusion between sales and marketing from a personal level. You used to have marketing and then sales. They're two independent silos, right? And they never really play together. And marketing's doing its own thing, creating messaging, trying to create its own brand awareness, if you would. And I'm talking specifically LinkedIn and social media here, right? But because we're in B2B, LinkedIn. Sales may not be posting at all. Their people may not be doing anything online. They're just using LinkedIn as a lead list, going out, hunting down their target market, and then trying to connect and message them. And I think what's emerging and what's going to be the norm moving forward is the combination of sales marketers that create their own personal brand using their face, because people do business with people. Brand influence may be happening on a company page where they're writing content that educates and so on and so forth. But the salesperson individually is going to have to engage and get involved with their own community on LinkedIn and definitely become the brand disciple, if you would, for companies. So as that happens, hey, thanks. Appreciate that, Greg. As that happens, both will rise together, right? You'll increase your brand influence, but you will also be much more human and bring much more of a humanistic standpoint to the brand as your salespeople engage in that. Now, we're not there yet. We even have a lot of our clients that it's like pulling teeth to try and get them to even put a like on something out there. But I think as people like us that are on the panel and that are on this call who become more and more aware of how to make this platform effective in today's current and moving forward sales environment, it's going to be absolutely critical and necessary that people humanize themselves and get more engaged on the platform other than just DMing and sending emails.
That actually dovetails with what Vivek was saying too. So you've got like a company. This is what I think has become more and more important. You can't get away with it without doing it anymore. Is a company needs to know what they stand for. They need to know why they exist, why they do business, and they need to get people on the bus that agree, and then they need to communicate internally and externally that same exact thing. And without that being clear, you're never going to have a sales team that is excited about sharing your marketing content, because it's like they still have that division. This is me, my personal brand. I don't even really like what we're doing over here. I'm just here for a job. And if you don't break that wall down and get people on the bus and have the excitement about your why for them to go, I love working here. Yeah, I have some hard days. I love what this company is about. This is great material, and I am excited to share it on my personal LinkedIn. If you can't get there, I think that you're going to be behind in the years to come.
You will.
And that's like an internal company thing, not even related to sales marketing, but it affects sales marketing.
And not only that, if you want to have a finger on the pulse of your market and what people are wanting, the problems that people are having that you can change, so on and so forth, that's coming from the sales team, right? The marketing team typically is not out there engaging people, and that's what needs to change from the marketing end as well. It needs to become a holistic company approach that we're engaging people on LinkedIn or whatever social platform that it is, because that's the number one way in which you're going to gain market share, understand your customer need, and be able to facilitate that so that the buying decision is not about anything other than, I trust you, I like you, you're the expert, I want to buy from you.
I would 100%, I'd say. But the thing is, like, is that a change? I would say, like, that is so important to what Isaac, what you were saying, and Monty. That's like, it's the rebellion that the salespeople are all about. The marketing people, the CEO, the chief storyteller, they're rebelling against. They're on the bus to get to the promised land, and they're rebelling against the status quo, and they're inviting their customers who are suffering to get on the bus with them. And so that's such a causal thing. But I would say that most companies aren't doing that today. And I don't see a sea change of marketers or even CEOs doing that. I see so many CEOs in B2B companies still broadcasting and promoting and shouting louder. I don't see them running a rebellion.
No, you're right. And it's a lack of awareness, for one. It's a lack of understanding, for two, but it is being stuck in an old process. And being stuck in the old process says transaction. You have a quota, you got to get money in here. You got to make X amount of calls, you got to send X amount of emails, and you have to hit these quotas. Every month it's a quota, right? And so there's a lack of understanding that this process has changed and that there's now a better way to do that. And it has a startup at the top, but that's from an education standpoint. And it's very difficult sometimes to get leadership themselves even to understand that if you transition your teams into something more about what we're talking about, you will not only improve your growth, but you will have long-term sustainable growth. The other benefit of it is you're capturing market, because you have a much better opportunity to capture market share by engaging in this today, because more than likely your competitors are not doing this either. So when this is a relationship game and it's all about who can get the more relationships faster, this is how you win.
So, by the way, I think we just broke the internet. Since we're also streaming live on LinkedIn, Ron Sullivan, just commented on something you said. He says, great content. If a company representatives become the face of the business, they need to be aware of the potential harm they can do to the brand if they're not prepared to conduct themselves properly. So that's referencing.
100%. That's totally awesome. Thanks for sharing it, because he's totally right. That's where the marketing, right, has to get involved, and why marketing and sales have to get together. And there has to be, as you guys were talking earlier, even, right, with the sales etiquette, what do we say? What do we not say? We can't offend people in a way that's going to drive business away. But to me, that's really an easily solvable thing.
With the right leadership.
With the right leadership. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really good. All right, panelists.
Have you guys, I'll throw one in there, Isaac. Have you guys seen that networking events, trade shows and stuff are mostly dead? I have talked to a few clients who have went ahead and gone to trade shows, typically that are attended by thousands, and they'll post pictures and stuff like that during the middle of the show, and it is a graveyard. There is nobody there. And they and they come back, they're extremely disappointed. And it's like, spent that money for nothing. Have you seen anything else come back to what it once was?
So Monty, two things. I'm putting on my first LinkedIn local Phoenix event, January 25th. I'll let you know how that goes. Oh, thank
Awesome.
you, Greg. We're going to do quarterly ones. It's going to be small, 40 people outside, respecting what's going on. However, I did a poll on LinkedIn for Social Media Marketing World 2022. I asked who's going and I tagged some of the key people that I see every year. And I just read the results. My answers were, heck yeah, I'm going. No way, Jose. Still thinking about it. It was evenly split, 30, 30, 30. Which I found surprising.
Yeah.
And that is a conference that has been going on for years. It's one of the biggest social media conferences. It's usually 5,000 people. The last one was in 2020, like a week before the world shut down. So I was surprised that more people weren't like, yeah, I'm in, because I think we're all craving in-person events, but I don't see them coming back full force. Ever. Like I see them coming back, but not to the capacity of what they were, because virtual is cheaper, more convenient. You only have to get dressed up from the top up. You don't have to drive somewhere, right? You can have your own food that you like. You don't have to go spend $20 on a crappy sandwich and chips and a Coke, right? Like at the convention center. But on the flip side of that, we're missing that human connection. Like Viveka, you just went to an event in San Diego, the ClickUp event. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. I mean, the ClickUp event, it was kind of sad, quite honestly. I mean, only half the seats were filled. There was, in spite of that, good energy in that, but they had seating in the whole, the whole area. I mean, they expected a few thousand, and I think there were way less than even 1,000.
It's probably
one
good
of the
to
interesting phenomena of the live events is that people who are people go to live events and want live events to come back, who really enjoy and get energized by being around a lot of people, like Mary.
Yeah.
But I think there's so many other people that would just love to just stay virtual and just, and they're comfortable with doing something like this, right? I can get on a Zoom call. I can even engage.
Well, I like this too, but I do need a couple in-person events. So I'm bringing back LinkedIn Local, because those are my people, right?
Yeah, I love it.
I'll create my own network. So I'm in Phoenix now, and sadly, there's not a networking group that I fit in with. They're way too cliquey. And so my friend said, create your own. And, so I'll create this LinkedIn Local, and I'm hoping, I walk away with 10 really great connections that we can support each other and grow our businesses. But I also like this because look, I wouldn't be able to see all you guys,
True.
right? And meet all you amazing, worldwide web users.
Well, and you can do this more often too.
Yeah, this is easier. Hands down, easier.
I miss real life events, I have to say, badly. But I think the reason I went to them is to network. And I think we're all finding ways to network, like right now. I think the piece that I miss the most is the creative ideation that goes on in a conference room with people coming up with ideas and bouncing ideas off each other. Yeah, sure, whatever. People are saying you can do this by Zoom. But I was a month ago, I actually had an in-conference brainstorm with a customer. And we had this like large Post-it notes, and we put them up on the board. And it was like a 3-hour idea fest that I don't think is even possible. I mean, with the tools that we have to like point to the paper that we had an hour ago, we're pointing to the other wall. It was like a 3D theatrical idea fest that I don't think we have the tools, this meta tools that Zuckerberg is talking about in the future. We don't have that now to have this kind of genius creativity that I saw in the conference room. Unless people here want to comment, what are your thoughts?
So great. I just did an in-person session with my new business bestie here in Phoenix. We met at a public library. We met for 3.5 hours and we wrote out goals and we bounced ideas off each other, and we allowed each other to release things that no longer serve us. So that I feel I'm with you. Like in person is different than Zoom. And so why this is easy, I love it. I also need some in-person energy. And that is probably because I'm an extrovert and I do get my energy from people. You know, I miss hugging people, and like, I'm going to social media marketing world and I'm gonna see the people there. And for me, it's that networking. It's not so much the speakers anymore. It's that networking and having lunch and talking business ideas. So.
All right, so we got about 5 minutes left. Panelist discussion went a little bit long. Open Q&A. Now's your time to shine. Did you see anything, Monty, in the chat at all, as far as questions that haven't been hit yet?
No, not yet. There's a lot of good conversation in the chat. Side conversation, if you would, but no real additional questions to add. If you have any, raise your hand. Let's get you on.
Yep. So there's a little button in Zoom that says raise your hand, and then it'll pop you up to the top of my view screen. So this is open Q&A for all the panelists.
I'm in Minnesota, and I believe warm weather events in winter are still pretty attractive, quite frankly.
All right, David O'Neill.
Okay, snow.
Oh, hey, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I've been involved in God knows how many of these kinds of meetings, you know, external meetings or you know, seminars, etc. And I'm always brought back to this. No matter what you think is happening in technology now, we are human, and we want, if not need, interaction. Meetings will be back. I don't think you can get away from them. We can COVID all we want right now. And certainly I've watched a lot of this interaction level change over the years. I worked for a company that actually created its own, you know, more or less interpersonal engineering kind of interface with its customers. But you still had to go visit them. You still had to have meetings where people came together. You still had to have that. And it wasn't always for the direct, immediate information. It was more about trust. And as much as I like everybody's little bitty picture here, it does matter if I was in a room with you drinking coffee or something else.
I agree with that.
Hallelujah.
People need people, so to speak, and you do need relationships, and ultimately you're right. I mean, I think it has to get back to a lot of in-person things. How that happens, though, I think will change. I think it'll continue, you know, build up of those relationships will still continue to happen predominantly digitally, and then at some point tip over into in-person type stuff.
I think what one of the greatest potentials from my perspective of a lot of this type of technology is that even with the meetings, et cetera, the physical meetings, you actually can create the relationship edge, as they would say in a network graph, to the people that you want to stay connected with much better now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a risk of etiquette, as we talked about earlier, about Saturday, really. But it's still, this is one of the most powerful things I've seen. And I go back to the days of Hollerith. So
maybe what you'll find is, you know, moving forward, it's like, how do we increase efficiency in how we spend our time? So maybe we'll find ourselves and our kids, as they become our age, will find themselves doing meetings like this, whether the attendees are local or not, to find their tribe, if you will. And then when they want to commit to an in-person meeting, they feel like there's higher value because they already know it's their people.
There's no question that this ability and the reduction in cost, which is amazing. I mean, I've watched the reduction in cost in making a video, for example, is ridiculous now. You can do it for free online, as long as you get a camera somewhere, and even that you don't necessarily need. I think that changes a lot. Like you say, I could actually create or begin to create a true engagement meeting by starting something, let's say on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever else, and then get a bunch of interested people to say, oh, okay, let's do it. I mean, that's like what's happening with meetups, right? Meetups are physical meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole business idea. physical meetings that actually start because you find groups online that look like, or you start your own group online that looks like something you might want to meet up about.
All right, Shireen, you've been so patient with your hand raise. What's your
Hi.
question or comment?
Well, my question really is around the 2 points that you have, like new strategies emerging due to the broad adoption of virtual meetings, and the line between sales and marketing, have they become blurry? And my question is, I mean, how many people find that, like, even when we talked about how, the salespeople really need to understand get in line with what's going on with the company so that there is more synergy between sales and marketing. And just when I think about, again, when I look at over the past 18 months, past 2 years, how many businesses were impacted because they didn't have digital practices, digital marketing, digital sales funnels, digital things that needed to be in place, and they didn't have them in place. And I just raise that because I know for me going forward into 2022, that's going to be one of my focuses, is because I still see that I work with pretty much small businesses and entrepreneurs. They don't understand digital marketing. They think social media, but they don't understand how all of that needs to connect to their products and services, how to really flesh out maybe a workflow or a funnel, and understand how everybody can be engaged in that. So I just wanted to put that on the table because I just think that that's still a missing element. And in order for things to shift, I think that, I don't know, CEOs or the people that run their marketing, business owners, need to understand how they really need to adopt that going forward. And that's not going to go away. So just a thought on that.
Good thought, Shireen. Aliko says, Shireen, you read her mind. Wah, wah, wah.
I know that's like a gift. No, I'm just
It's definitely true. And, I think the difficult thing for leadership in companies is that this is an ever-changing environment that they didn't understand to begin with. So, you take a look at LinkedIn. I mean, it changes every year, changes all the time. Then new things come online. It's like, what do you focus on? What do you not focus on? They have to rely so heavily on their marketing team to say where they're going to be. From my experience, all the changes and all the things that are going on, it's even hard for an individual or marketing leadership to stay on top of. So you almost have to choose one channel, dominate there, and then move on to the next one, the best that you can. And it's to get marketing and sales then to merge has to go down to the individual basis. You have to get leadership to understand the ramifications of it and why to do it, and then deal with the individuals, not like the company as a whole or the whole data, marketing, all these channels, things as a whole as well. You have to deal with the individual person to help them with the individual thing.
I could get that. So just so real, Monty, in the sense that I know I always caution my clients to not to try to eat the whole elephant in one bite.
Mm-hmm.
That you really need to break things down and have it bite-sized. And when you're trying to include other people in it, they need to understand, because if they don't understand, they can't execute well. And
Right.
so, and I think that, don't get me wrong, even when I think about what's going on, I do think that it's a real challenge for leadership to really get into and understand this digital space that we're really in, and then trying to get everybody on board, the right people in the right seat, people going in the same direction, so I mean, I get it. I don't think it's a small feat. I think
Right.
it's a very big challenge. So thanks.
I'll give one final comment and then we're past the hour. So thanks everybody for sticking around. What I've noticed in the last year, as companies are like, for one reason or another, not all companies, some companies have had fantastic years, but for the companies who haven't, they're wanting to trim back. What I've observed happen a number of times is they're like, well, what can we trim back? And I feel like I've observed on the chopping block first is marketing. And then, because that's the long game, And then on the chopping block after that would be sales. And there's a bunch of other things as well too. But I see marketing gets canned, and then sales is a little bit safe for a little while. But what happens is that company then, they don't have any marketing resources to provide their sales team. And they end up actually in the long term really hurting themselves because they've traded like an exponential growth curve for a very short plateau. And so I've observed that as well. And kind of going back to what Monty was saying with the sort of merging of sales and marketing, when you axe your marketing department, it actually now, I feel like it hurts your sales team. And I've seen a lot of marketing departments on the chopping block. So one thing. All right, Dave, one more before we go.
They dropped the coffee. It's time to go.
Yeah.
All right. My internet connection is a little bit choppy here. Any final questions?
Great discussion, everybody. Thanks
All
for
right.
taking part today.